monthly meeting. It's about Save Our Fish. We've got amazing co-hosts. We've got Michelle, we've got Meghan Barker, we've got Mia Sheppard, Stuart Warren, and we have Jillian Tisdale. And so there we all are. So I'm obviously Julia Mitchell. I'll be the moderator for this Zoom call. And then we have Michelle. Michelle, if you want to give a quick little overview.
I run United Women on the Fly guide service, teach, guide, do the things. I'm living on the Squally lands and Squaxin lands, and I am from and live in Olympia, Washington.
Doing okay. I live down in the Florida Keys, and I work as the outreach and engagement coordinator for Captains for Clean Water down here. I also run a fly shop in Marathon, Florida. I love to fly fish for tarpon, and that's my big thing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Meghan Barker. I am the Bristol Bay organizer for Trout Unlimited. I live and work on traditional Dena'ina homelands, otherwise known as Anchorage, Alaska. And I've been the Bristol Bay organizer for the last 3 years, and I love Bristol Bay. I love fishing, but what I'm really passionate about is sharing with other people how to be active and engaged citizens for whatever you care about and what's going on in your community. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks for having me.
Hi there, my name is Mia Sheppard, and I am owner of Little Creek Outfitters. I've been guiding and running an outfitter on rivers like the Deschutes, the John Day, the Grand Ronde, the Oahe, and the Sandy for about 19 years now. So I've been in the business for a long time, and I'm very passionate about the sport and about these places and about the fish. I did work for a nonprofit for about 7 years. So my topic in writing letters, I wrote a lot of comment letters for about 7 years, but even prior to that too. So
hey everyone, thanks for having me. Stuart Warren, he, him, his, my pronouns. I grew up on Rogue tribe lands down in the Rogue Valley. I'm now a retired fly fishing guide, pursuing other academic interests, mostly in urban planning. I just finished a 4-year term as a city council member in the town of Phoenix, Oregon, and I'm currently on the Land Conservation Development Board here in Oregon.
So I'm just going to basically go through quickly the history and the flow of the Everglades, what Captains is about, and also what we, how we were founded, and how you guys can get involved. So no, find a different one. We, for anyone who's unfamiliar, Captains for Clean Water is a nonprofit grassroots organization founded by a couple guides, fishing guides that are pictured here. They have been fighting to save the Everglades, and our main focus is Everglades restoration. We have a very small team, so we do try really hard to focus on Everglades restoration, but we do try to help out around the state and other issues. We've been pretty successful, and we do our best to rally the voices of the people in our local communities, including outdoorsmen and big corporations like Yeti and Orvis, Costa del Mar, and many more, in order to move the needle on state and federal policies that directly improve our water quality. So Chris and Daniel, a while back in 2016, and prior to that, they were fishing guides for a long time. They started to see massive, decline in the water quality. And then in 2016, there was a big Lake Okeechobee discharge right in the middle of tourist season to the Caloosahatchee, which is over in the west, like goes to the west coast. And as many of you know, I'm sure a lot of fishing guides make 70% of their income during just the 3 months 3 or 4 or 5 months, right in the middle of tourist season, they started seeing their clients cancel and stuff like that. So they started seeing, hotel cancellations and all kinds of, like women didn't want to come down and sit on the beach because their husbands could fish, and it's much different out there. And back then it was just the same. So they started a Facebook group kind of out of desperation, and then they decided they wanted to have a meeting at Bass Pro in their hometown. They didn't expect a whole lot, and they showed up and there was 300 people there. TV shows and news centers and stuff like that, fishing guides, but not just fishing guides and anglers and commercial fishermen. There were bartenders and small business owners and hotel owners that were all just desperate because they were losing money due to this red tide. So they kind of talked to this group of people, and they felt like they basically asked, if you asked 10 of them what the problem was, that you would get 10 different answers. So they just had a lack of education. There was a lack of readily available information for these people who were more than willing to become educated. So Chris and Daniel decided to start Captains for Clean Water to provide basically a platform for all of these people to use their voice and also educate anyone who needed to be educated. The history of the Everglades. So historically, the Everglades used to start up here around present day Orlando. And this is Lake Kissimmee around here, if you can see my mouse. And all of this water would flow down into Lake Okeechobee, and then it would just overflow over the southern rim, and it would nourish the Everglades. And then it would eventually drain into Florida Bay around here. That is no longer what happens. This over here is what happens now. These are 2 man-made canals, rivers. And then there are many right around here. I hope you can see my mouse. These are many man-made like canals and pump stations that the water is moved around back and forth that serve, the interests of a few kind of special interest people. We won't really name them, but it's water supply. And then whenever we have really high lake levels or we have heavy rainfall, they pump all of this water that is now dammed in the bottom of it. It's polluted because it just sits stagnant. They pump all of this polluted water to the east and the west. And so the west goes over to the Gulf of Mexico. The east obviously goes over to the Atlantic. The east is the St. Lucie River. The west is the Caloosahatchee. And this creates what we call red tide, which is Karenia brevis. It is an organization that causes red tide. We get the question often that is it naturally occurring? Yes, it is naturally occurring. But so is forest fires. Forest fires are naturally occurring, but if you throw a bunch of gasoline on them, I mean, you have a little bit worse of a situation than you did in the beginning. So whatever the naturally occurring red tide occurs offshore, Karenia brevis, it starts to move inshore, and then it starts to interact with more man-made nutrients that are kind of put in the water by a myriad of different avenues. One of them is the Lake Okeechobee discharges. One of them is rainfall and runoff. Nitrogen and phosphorus is basically the 2 nutrients that feed Karenia brevis the most. So it's a very unpicky eater. It'll eat just about anything in the water, and nitrogen really feeds it and supercharges it into these red tides that affect the fisheries, which is what you're seeing on the news. Whenever you see these dead, these big fish kills, That's because we have a supercharged red tide. So that is one of our biggest problems. Obviously, we have a myriad of them, but Captains really takes a couple of like very specific approaches on all of this. I'm gonna try and move. Okay, so this is a picture from Lake Okeechobee. This is actually a bacteria in Lake Okeechobee. This is not red tide. This is a picture of the lake moving the water out through the rivers into the ocean. This is going to be a picture of red tide. So this is what it looks like on the coast. So one of the biggest ways that we can make a difference, there's a couple ways. We have CERP, which is the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, and then we have LOSOM, which is Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. So LOSOM is Captain's main focus right now, just because we have kind of a time limit on it. So what it is basically a rule book that will dictate the way that Lake Okeechobee is managed for the next 10 years. It's the way that they move the water from the lake around the state. And so, at what point of the year, or what, during the wet season or the dry season, do we need to get it to recreational interests? At what point do we need it to get to the agriculture people? So what it's being managed under right now is called LORS 08. So it's over a decade old manual. So it's very outdated. It's kind of serving people, serving the people that should be served, but maybe not taking into account the rest of Florida. So recreational fishing, recreational marine in general. So what we need to do is make sure that the new manual takes us into account. Fishing, marine life, health across all of South Florida. So LOSOM is a process that the South Florida Water Management District, and most importantly, the Army Corps, is going through. We've been involved in this process with them since 2018. They came to a decision recently that we're going to go with Alternative Plan CC, which is the most beneficial to the largest amount of stakeholders in Florida. It's an amazing starting point, but that being said, it delivers a higher nutrient load to the Caloosahatchee, which goes to the Gulf of Mexico, than LORS 2008. So that's totally unacceptable. That being said, we have heard recently that we will be able to reduce a bit of discharges to the Caloosahatchee. We still need people to contact the Army Corps currently. The way that you can do that is through the website. It's super easy. It's very, sorry, I just got a chat. Mia, what agency manages the lake? So that's the Army Corps and South Florida Water Management District. But it's going to be the Army Corps, which is who's coming up with LOSOM. So the Army Corps, what you can do with to write them, basically you can go to our website. You can go and you just go to www.captainsforcleanwater.org, and there's a huge CTA right at the top. It's our main CTA right now. Click on it and you can input your information. It automatically populates an email. You can adjust that email as you see fit. And that automatically goes to the Army Corps, the Colonel. And then you can also do that with other CTAs that we have. So our software that we have within our website, basically, if we have a CTA that needs to go to Congress for funding, which will come very soon in January of 2022, I believe. You basically can go in, just input your information, and it'll determine what district you're in, if you're a Florida resident or if you're not. And it'll auto-populate what representative you need to contact. Here's a CTA to email the Army Corps to reduce the damaging discharges to the east and to the west. We also need to focus on sending a lot of water south. That kind of comes under CERP, which is the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. That is the largest environmental restoration project in the world. It was passed in 2000, and kind of due to like lack of federal funding and political will, it's been kind of stagnated. But recently we've had a lot of progress on it. We just broke ground on the Everglades agricultural area reservoir. So that is going to make up of 10,500 acre storage. And then additionally 6,500 acres of filtration marsh. So that is going to make it possible for us to store excess water from Lake Okeechobee, store it, clean it, and then send it through these filtration marshes and send it south so that we don't have to inundate the east and the west with all of this water, and we can nourish the Everglades the way it needs to be nourished, because we haven't had it for so long. So we've experienced die-off, like seagrass die-offs and fish kills down in Florida Bay too, due to just lack of water in general. The biggest question that everyone always asks, and I think the biggest point of this presentation is what you guys can do to help. And by far and away, I'm sure all of you know, is use your voice. It's so powerful and it is so important. What we've noticed in the last 5.5 years of being an organization is the best way you can move the needle is just new people getting involved and being vocal, not just on social media, definitely social media, but also to your representatives, your policymakers who ultimately have the power to put pressure on the polluters. Also education, setting aside time, which all of you do, to educate yourself on these issues. And obviously, you know, it's natural. The more you know about this subject, the more you're going to talk about it, the more you're going to talk to your friends and your family about it. And when you educate them, they're going to get interested, and then they set aside time, and then they educate their friends and family. And that's how our voices become louder than the people who have too much money that make the decisions that shouldn't be making the decisions. So when we as outdoorsmen and women have the ability to educate those around us, and we give them a voice too, our voices are louder than theirs. We create political cover for policymakers to make the right decisions. They are allowed to. They don't have to worry about the money that's being thrown at them, because all they have to say is, this is what my constituents said. I did what they wanted. So we make our voices louder, and that's all we have to do. If you want to get involved with captains, Twitter, Instagram, obviously, and then you can sign up for the newsletter for free. You can become a member of our organization. It's $30 for the year. I would like to finish with this quote, and if I cry, don't make fun of me. But this quote is from Shannon Estenos, who has served as the Chief Operating Officer of the Everglades Foundation. She's currently the Assistant Secretary of the Interior for Fishing and Wildlife and Parks in the current administration. She has a 24-year career in conservation and holds degrees in international affairs and civil engineering from Florida State University. This quote is impactful to me because it encourages me to use my voice, even though I am only one person. I am definitely not a scientist or a politician. She said this during her opening speech at an Everglades conference in 2019. And she said it while she was pointing to this picture. This is Daniel Andrews and Chris Whitman. These guys aren't policy people. They're not environmentalists. They are fishing guides. And in 3 short years, they are now operating at the highest political level. They are creating a new Everglades movement that's less patient. They have no patience with government. They have none of it. They are more demanding, they are less bureaucratic and more democratic. They are inclusive. They are completely unintimidated by power, completely. They are fast on their feet, and they are the evidence that political resilience in the Everglades is strong. Thank you guys so much for having me. Please feel free anytime to contact me if you have any questions about red tide, about anything at all. If I don't know the answer, I will make sure that I get it to you. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Jillian, for sharing all the really awesome information that you did. We didn't even plan it, but I feel like there's so many great segues between, even though they're really far away, but really good segues between the Everglades and Bristol Bay. And I'll just make one shameless plug for a film that Captains for Clean Water did last year that highlights one of our guides who works down in Florida and in Bristol Bay, John Landry. Just a really great example of telling the story of two really important places that are greatly at risk. And so, yeah, a lot of really cool similarities between the two groups. And while I could definitely spend a lot of time talking about Bristol Bay, I want to dive in a little bit deeper to some of the very things that Jillian shared about how exactly we engage and use our voices, both as organizations and individuals, and give you hopefully some really clear like paths forward and clear action plans for how you're going to go out and be an advocate for the fish, the rivers, the communities that you care about. And so before I dive into talking about any of that, I just want to, I think it's really important to note that not everyone's advocacy looks the same. And I think that's important and it's good to acknowledge. So what you see on the screen is Nellie Williams, who's our Alaska program director. And, you know, for her, one day looked like being in front of a huge group of people at a rally with a microphone, being super loud, super rambunctious, but in the best way. And while that kind of work, that kind of advocacy is super important, I'll just say that that's not the norm for 95% of people who care and who are speaking out for the things that we need to be vocal about. And so, yeah, hopefully I think I got about 15, 20 minutes. I'm just going to walk through a little bit about what some of the things that organizations use to help bring people with similar values and the same requests together. And then we're going to get into, I'm going to talk about calling your elected officials and how exactly that works. And then we'll touch briefly on emails, but I know that other folks are going to be talking about that later, so I won't step on too many toes. So our two ways that you can engage and how we can be really good advocates for our fish and local waters. And one of them is obviously through organizations. I work for Trout Unlimited, so of course I'm going to say that coming in with an organization like TU, like Native Fish Society, like Captains for Clean Water, those are really great ways to stand together with a big group of people who share the same wants and desires for the places that we love to fish. And it's also an incredible way to gather a lot of people power together. And that's how, when we talk about big movements, when we talk about big successes happening for these places, a lot of times that comes just from organizations supporting local communities and what local groups want for their home rivers. However, when we talk about organizations, when we talk about the many members or supporters that are behind a lot of these organizations, we absolutely have to remember that we are all individuals and we are all coming to these groups as individuals, and as individuals we have a lot of power in our solo voice too. And so I think that's just a really important thing, that whether you engage with an organization or you do a lot of this work on your own, there's a lot of benefits to both of it, and I would encourage you to do both. So I think Jillian started off setting us up really well to talk about, as organizations, what happens when you fill out a call to action or a CTA. So when you go to a website, whether it's Clean Water or Captains or TU, you click on the big take action button and it brings you to one of these like pre-formulated messages or letters that you immediately, like, you know, you put in your contact information, you hit submit, and then it goes away. So like Jillian said, our systems, organizations subscribe to these systems that are set up so that based on your address, it is automatically sending this letter to your elected official. or whoever the target is, whether it's the Army Corps, member of Congress, your governor. And so these are really great ways to get, I would say, the masses in. And just one thing when we talk about masses is that this is a really helpful platform for you to engage in. It helps organizations with tracking. So one example for us is last fall, yeah, we did a petition, many of you signed it, to President Trump asking him to deny the key federal permit for the proposed Pebble mine. And through our tracking system, we were able to see that over 50,000 sportswomen and men signed the petition and sent this letter. And then we were able to take that number and give it to media to blow it up and make it a huge deal, to really capture just how many people were engaged in this effort and supported Pebble not being granted its federal permit. So again, when you go on and you take the 30 seconds to sign a call to action and to fill it out, it's actually really effective for a lot of other reasons than just sending that note on to whoever the target is. So that would be, I would say, one of the primary ways and what's really helpful when you join an organization and take action through a call to action with an organization. So that being said, if you are going on and signing those call to actions, awesome. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization, super great. But if you are interested in taking action as an individual, I want to start with like super basic of how do you even know who your elected officials are if it's not something that you have looked at, which is totally fine. For some people, you're coming to this of, I want to learn more and I want to learn how to be a better advocate. And that absolutely starts with voting and knowing who represents you at every level of government. So if you literally just Google who is my representative, you will come up with like a bunch of different search engines. And this was just the first one that came up when I did it on my own. And based on the address, your home address that you put in, it shows you who your representative is, who your representatives are, all the way from the federal level. So your members of Congress, both in the Senate and the House, who represent you, all the way down to like who is your local city council representative. So it's again really great to just go in and figure out who is representing you and your community. And then I would also say that if you are going in and finding this information, and if you already know who your representatives are, it's really great to just go ahead and add in their contact information to your phone. So it might look a little weird when you have a senator as a contact, but it makes it that much easier to just have their number ready to go for when you're ready to contact them. And I would also just say that when you use a search engine like this, it's going to tell you their email and the phone number that you can call that's going to be open for the public. So again, all that information is fairly readily available with a Google search. A lot of questions that I get as an organizer is like, when is the best time to contact my elected officials about, XYZ topic? And I would just say that it is always the right time. You can contact your elected official anywhere. And so a lot of people tend to come to this place where they're fired up when they see things in the news that either make them mad or that they want to support, or that it's at a critical time. Like when, it's 3 days left until a decision is being made, I want to get loud about it. That is absolutely a great time to pick up the phone, to write an email, to flood social media channels. And that's how, again, people get loud, and that's how we raise awareness about issues that are happening. So that's why I say always engage at those times, but it's also really important to note that a lot of the decisions that are being made that we may or may not like are happening in those quiet times, in those lulls when you're not hearing about things in the news, when things aren't all over your social media feed or are being covered by the media. And so it's always a good time to check in with your elected officials, even when things are quiet, and just remind them what you care about as a constituent, as someone who lives in the community, who's a business owner, whatever you might be caring about. It's just always good to make sure that our elected officials are aware of what we care about. And then as far as when it comes to what is physically the best time to contact your elected officials, luckily in this day and age, we have so many resources at our disposal that really allow you to decide when it's the best for you to be out loud and outspoken. So you might not be able to make it to, the rally after work or on a Saturday because you have XYZ commitment, but maybe you have 30 seconds while you're walking the dog in the morning to leave a voicemail for your elected official, or you have 2 minutes during a lunch break to send off a quick email. All of these things are intended to be as easy as possible and to make it really simple for you to take action. I can't really say that I've personally spent more than maybe like 10-15 minutes at the very max writing a public comment or working on a script to call a decision maker. I think it's a big barrier when we get like nervous about having to be like, you have to be an expert or you have to have a ton of information going into however you're going to be outspoken. And hopefully this, what I have to share just goes to show that like you don't, you just have to care and you just have to basically be polite. So I am a really big proponent of making calls to your elected official because it's a very like in your elected official's face's way of saying like there are people in their community that care about certain things and are holding you accountable as a decision maker. And so I go back to I think what Jillian had said is that bottom line, it is our elected officials' responsibility to represent us. We are their constituents. Like we put these people in public office to represent our best interests in our communities. And so when you are contacting someone about a cause you care about, it's literally their job to listen to you and to take that into account. And sometimes they do that and sometimes they don't. But bottom line is that you always have a right to be leaving a phone call or a voicemail or sending an email. That's how the public process works. So a couple other things to remember when you are making a phone call to your elected official is that one, when you call, it's very unlikely that you're actually going to talk to the member. Like I feel like I can say with like 99% uncertainty that you're never going to talk to a senator or a member of Congress. You're most likely going to be talking to one of their staff or an intern. A couple other things just to consider when you're making a phone call. What a response that I get a lot of time is people tell me that they have phone anxiety, which I think is super real. And I also got that right when I started considering making phone calls as part of my advocacy work, because you kind of feel a little intimidated. Like this is a politician, or this is someone who like has a lot going on. But again, I come back to, and it's kind of the like what you look in the mirror and tell yourself is like, no, it's their job to listen to you, and you have the power here, and this is your role as an active citizen. So if you, though, are still really not comfortable talking to someone on the phone, I encourage you to, you can call after hours and leave a voicemail. So your messages can be short and sweet, and your phone calls in general should be short and sweet. And I just keep coming back to it. Your elected officials work for you. It's their job to listen. So I think I have time just to show, if we go to the next slide. So sometimes I write a script when I call an elected official, and sometimes I don't have to, just because I know exactly what I'm going to say. But just for the sake of showing you how easy it is, I'm going to call Senator Murkowski and just leave a quick message, and we'll just put it on speaker so you guys can hear what it's like.
Thank you for your call. For information about my office locations and hours of operation, please press 1. Know that I appreciate that you're taking the time to share your thoughts with me on the issues that are important to you. If you're an Alaska resident and would like a response to your concerns, please leave your name, address, and phone number. Please press 2 for this option. You can also leave me an email on my website at www.murkowski.senate.gov. If you would like to speak to a member of my staff, please press 3. To hear these options again, please press X. Thank you for calling our Washington, D.C. office. We appreciate you sharing your comments. Please leave a message.
Hi, I'd like to leave a message for the senator. My name is Meghan Barker, and I'm a voting constituent in Anchorage. My area code is 99517. I'm calling to request that the senator support and introduce legislation as soon as possible to permanently protect Bristol Bay from hard rock mining. The resource is a national treasure, and we need legislation to permanently retire the mineral leases in the region and support local communities, the local communities, local businesses, and the millions of supporters across the country and world who care about Bristol Bay. I do not need a phone call back. Thank you for taking messages. It's as simple as that. Like that's all it takes to call an elected official. Like I just showed, you can leave a voicemail after hours since it's clearly outside of their office time. But I hope that just shows you like it can be really simple. And most of the time, I think hopefully Stuart will talk a little bit about this of what goes on the other side of what elected officials are doing when they get those comments and what that looks like. A couple things I wanted to point out too with what I said and like what you should highlight when you are leaving a comment. Introduce yourself. You should always say that you are a voting constituent if you are. Again, it just holds some accountability of how you are showing up to that message, and that your elected official should be listening to this message because they represent you. You can give as much detail of where you live and if you like, but I always usually share an area code just because it kind of helps make it clear that I actually am from their district or their state. And then you can go into your introduction. If I'm a sport angler, I'm realizing that I didn't do this in my message, but in general, you can just say, I'm an Alaskan, or I live in XYZ place and I care about this issue, and that's fine too. It's super clear and simple ask that you can give into. You don't have to share a ton of details unless you'd like to. And then I would always just encourage you to be polite and thank them for taking messages. And especially if you are talking to, again, a staff member or an intern, it's always just a nice touch that goes a long way. And then I'll also note that if you are a business owner or a veteran, I also encourage you to just highlight that in your message. Those tend to be two qualifiers that get a lot of phone calls back if you indeed want a phone call back or you want to talk to your elected official. I have a friend who's a veteran, and anytime that he calls and says he's a veteran on whatever issue that he is raising, he always gets a phone call back. So just a really great way to kind of share your experiences and what background you bring and how that might be relevant to your member as they move forward in making decisions. Okay, and like I said, I'm not going to go too much into detail on the emails. Again, if you're not comfortable with a phone call, an email is another really easy, simple way that you can share whatever you are passionate about. A couple other notes here is that it's pretty unlikely that if you submit an email through their general contact that you're either going to get a response, and if you do, I would guess that it's probably going to be an automated response. Nonetheless, you should still do it because we have had members of Congress that they get so many comments and emails about, for example, Bristol Bay, that they then have to go in and really like establish their position and how they feel and where they support when it comes to the issue. And we've gotten that from like senators from Illinois, like that don't necessarily have a super direct connection, but that they've heard about it from their constituents so much that they have to craft some way to respond. So still important. Similar to your phone call is that this is a place where you can go into detail, but you also don't have to. And also, like the phone call, professionalism counts. Using complete sentences, using punctuation, it's all just going to help convey your message a little bit better rather than it just getting kind of tossed to the side. My script for an email is pretty much exactly the same as what I would probably use for a phone call. So I'm identifying that I'm a voting constituent. I'm saying my role, why I care, and then my ask is really clear. Maybe one other sentence that you throw in there with some information, and then you sign off, and you could maybe include a phone number on there. Again, if you'd like a phone call back, I wouldn't guarantee that you're going to get one, but again, just to show that it can be short and sweet. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to take an hour for you to draft. And some of those short and sweet comments are actually a lot more effective. Those are just two ways that you can engage with your elected officials. I think social media is another really great one that kind of goes unused sometimes. going and commenting respectfully is a really great way that we have done things with our senators. Basically, anytime they post anything about fishing, we send all of our supporters over to go write hashtag no pebble mine, hashtag permanent protections, all of the things. And when they have 300 comments on a social media post, that gets noticed. And that's absolutely another way that we can leverage our power as constituents to get what we want. So I would say if you are already doing this, or you want to go a step further when it comes to getting a lot of people to speak up about the things that we care about, I encourage you to organize. And organizing, obviously something that I'm really passionate about, but it can be as simple as you taking a screenshot of the script that you just made, as well as the phone number for your elected official, posting it on Instagram and tagging 3 friends and saying, hey, it just took me 3 minutes to contact this member of Congress. Please do it as well. It's urgent. And we do really well. And we've seen a lot of really good success with peer-to-peer organizing. So when my friend or when my friends look at me and I say, hey, I just took 30 seconds to make a call, and they know that I am in the middle of my workday, or, you know, I've got lots of other things going, I'm trying to get out the door to go on a trip for the weekend, something like that. They're like, well, if Meghan can do it, then I can also make this phone call super quickly. And so again, that peer-to-peer organizing, specifically pulling people in and challenging them to use their voice collectively, that's ultimately how we use our power to stand up for these places. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think I just shared a fire hose everyone with information, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what Mia has to share about tips for writing comments, and also some of the other perspectives to be shared. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Meghan and Jillian, for all your information. And wow, that was great. And a lot of good points that were brought up. And you know, and I think using, of course, organizations to channel your voice is a great way to be an advocate. I want to focus more on the individual aspect of it, because after 19 years of being a guide in a business, I've realized that you can't always leave it up to the nonprofits to create that change. And so your individual voice is really powerful. And that's something I've experienced over the years, just being a business. And it also shows, turning in comment letters, it also shows those agencies that you do care a lot about, you know, what's going on those rivers or the places or with the fish. And so I just wanted to highlight some of the things that, you know, the reason why I think these letters are important. It's an opportunity to be involved in that decision-making process. And when I talk about comment letters, so there's agencies, every agency, so the Bureau of Land Management or the National Forest Service, or, you know, the Army Corps of Engineer, like Jillian was talking about, all these people, all these agencies, they go through these processes when they're looking at things like, let's say on the lower Deschutes, there's, you know, water quality issues. And so they might, or, you know, there's a lot of recreation. And so they'll, you know, decide that they have to, you know, maybe address the increase in boaters on the river or something. And so they're going to come up with these reports. They're called environmental impact studies. And so, and they're going to look and assess, like, you know, all this data, scientific data, and they're going to look at this and go, okay, now we need to get the public involved in this process and find out what the public thinks about this. And so then they do this process. It's called a NEPA process, and it's the National Environmental Policy Act. And so all these agencies are required to go through this process and make these certain issues public. And so so this is an opportunity for the public to get involved. And And so over the years, I've turned in many comment letters on the Deschutes and the John Day, especially because this is where we make a living. And so, you know, it's turning in a comment letter. It's the opportunity to express your thoughts and ideas, and also to get to know the agencies and get to know who the managers are and get to know the locals. And every, whenever there is an EIS or a opportunity to comment on something, these agencies will hold public meetings in the local communities. Like Marty and I just went to one a month ago in Condon regarding there's anyway, I won't get into what it is, but it's regarding fish and, you know, and new recreational planning in this one area. And we showed up there, and there's ranchers, and there's the Chamber of Commerce, and there's all these other people that you know, are engaged in the area and that care about this. And so it's a really great opportunity to, again, just really intimately get to know, if you love that area, just get to know, you know, the people and the agencies. And yeah, just it gives you more stake in the game. So when you're writing a comment letter, you know, you want to state directly what the subject is. And just, you know, usually the environmental impact study is going to say, you know, it's going to say, let's say 30-mile or recreational planning. And so you're going to type 30-mile recreational planning. Or, you know, if it's, you know, some water quality issue on the Deschutes River. And so then you want to be informative, be specific, you know, state who you are. If you're a business owner or an angler, or if you live in that district, or, you know, or you say you don't live in the district, but you fish the river for the last 10 years or 2 years, and you really, you know, you care about that place. So state, and then state your views. I want to say this before you do not need to have an English degree or a scientific degree or a scientific background to write these letters. I don't have an English degree or a science background, but I have, you know, experience being in these places. And so, you know, gather the information, look online, gather the data. And if it relates to a bill, you want to state what the bill is. And so they are looking for, they want it, you know, they want accurate information. They want new information. If there is, so the Bureau of Land Management, when they have these reports that they show the public, they're going to state alternatives for maybe going in a direction for how they want to manage something. And so, you know, you want to suggest maybe a new alternative. So again, give them as much information as you can, and you want facts. You want to be courteous, and, you know, definitely you don't want to attack anybody. So they don't like that. So yeah, keep it local. Explain the hometown relevance on the issue and how it's important to you. Be constructive and positive about the issue and helpful, and always at the end, you know, state that you appreciate their work, and they do appreciate that. So yeah, okay, so this is just examples. This is just a couple examples. So high water temperatures in the lower Deschutes is harmful for steelhead, and studies show, you know, and maybe should, you know, give them some data and some hard facts that you find online, and let them know that releasing colder water will help fish. Bad comments, stop killing our fish. And I've been looking, well, again, because I care about these rivers a lot, the John Day and the Deschutes, I look at the management plan. So the Deschutes and the John Day are managed by the Bureau of Land Management. And there's some co-managers, but they come out with these recreational plans that are, 400 pages long, but there's, specific information in those documents regarding, fish and wildlife and recreation. And, and so getting to know, you don't have to read those plans page by page, but looking in there to see how their language is spoken and being able to speak that in the letter that you write is also really helpful. And in those documents, they also list comments that have been turned into them. And so it's really fun to look at some of those comments and see, what people have written. And and I've been told by BLM managers that comments that basically don't have any substance to them, they're not considered. So when I found that out, that was just a couple of months ago, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So at first I'm like, so I have to be a scientist to write a letter? And it's like, no, you just need to do some research and make it personal. Tell them about your experience and what you see on the river and how that impacts you as an angler. And it's hard to see. I just put, this was an example of a letter, but I think it's really hard to see. But if anyone would like to see an example, I'm happy to share that with you via email. So how to find information on agencies, online, these are different, let's see, the Bureau of Land Management, Environmental Quality, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but clicking on those links right there will bring you to news releases, and you can find out what they are seeking public comment on. And so, and then also, you can also find out through your state legislative website as well. The terminology, RMP, Resource Management Plan, that's the guide to the project. That's you'll see that acronym, sorry, quite a bit with the Bureau of Land Management. EIS, the Forest Service will use that. The BLM will use that. I think the Army Corps of Engineer, they use EIS, Environmental Impact Study. So that's the statement outlining the impacts. Your NEPA process, and that's the law requiring the federal agencies to assess environmental impacts. And that's just a kind of a quick and dirty overview of writing comment letters. Again, it's just I think it's a really powerful way to express your voice and also to have a stake in the game. And then I'm excited to hear what Stuart has to say about what happens to those letters. I know that the BLM, they've told me that they are required to read each and every one and consider everything in the letter, but it's going to be great to hear more about that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's going to be a tough act to follow as always. Wonderful job, all of you. It's really nice to just fall right in behind you because I feel like I don't have to tell you all that much now. But I will directly kind of, respond to Mia's question about what does happen to these letters. And I definitely cannot speak on, behalf of the BLM. But as an elected official myself, I'm getting these letters myself. I don't have a staff. I have a computer that the state has given me to use. And so I archive things. And more often than not, I'm seeing letters that are kind of these mass mailers in my email. That's probably the most common comment I get from folks. And it probably is the least effective from my perspective. It gives me kind of an idea of like what people are fired up about and gives me an idea of kind of where the population lays on the particular issue. But by far the most effective way to get your attention or get the attention of one of your elected officials is to show up at a public meeting and testify in front of all of them. So I sit on the Land Conservation Development Commission. It's a 7-member commission, and we host public meetings twice a month where we discuss all things that have to do with the Department of Land Conservation Development Agency. Everything that we discuss is a matter of public record, and it's a legal framework that we have to follow. We're actually not allowed to deliberate outside of that public meeting space in an effort to make our process as transparent as possible. So, no one's really touched on that issue yet, but going to these meetings, like me was kind of hinting at, is probably the most effective way to hear your voice, or from my perspective, because I get to see your face too. I get to connect who you are as a person and really what you're passionate about. Then the next one down would definitely be a phone call. I love getting phone calls from constituents because I actually get to ask questions and respond. And then followed closely behind that, I would say, writing a personalized email or letter. I don't get too many hard-written letters anymore, but I do occasionally get them, and I always read them because it's such an abnormal thing for me to get. So don't be afraid to send in a handwritten letter too. It's kind of personal that way. So once I get letters, and when I'm dealing with something that's kind of a hot topic item, that's when I really have to pay attention, because I don't hear that much from my constituents unless it's a heated thing. And so what I do is then I'll typically make kind of an email archive for that topic. And then I will say, okay, there's 35 comments in favor of, and then there's 25 comments, opposed, which is a powerful tool for persuading my vote when it comes down to us making a vote on whatever issue it is. Now, most elected officials are not going to utilize that as their sole deciding factor, right? Because it's pretty easy for different groups to advocate and rile people up to kind of create this, what I would describe as maybe not a full representative view of, my constituency. But it definitely plays a huge role in my decision making, because if there are people who are really getting active and talking to me about it and actually making the effort to have a conversation with me, I'm much more inclined to vote in that manner. But oftentimes it comes down to me just making a decision on what's being presented. And if you haven't been to a public meeting before, you should go. It's incredibly educational, but we go through a whole process before the meeting. We're given, an agenda, and my agenda, let me see, I'll show it to you. This is what I get to read every 2 months, prepared by professionals that are staff members. And so there's a huge educational background that goes into the decision making. And then in the meeting, the staff will give a presentation on that topic and outline the issues, the concerns, and then the questions at hand. And so at that point, then I've had a chance to hear from staff. I've had time to do research in the background. I've generally gotten a few emails or phone calls from constituents, and then we get public testimony. So all those factors, are what I use to make the decisions that I make every single time. And then on top of that, I should say, is we go into deliberations. So you're going to be able to watch, a 7-member commission debate something, which is an incredibly wonderful thing. And it's the process is such an amazing process, and it takes forever. It makes a lot of people mad. The government moves really slow, but without that, we wouldn't have the democracy that we do have now. And the only way we can make it better at this point is for more people to get involved. So I'm going to challenge you to go to a public meeting and just observe it at the very least, or go there and testify. Another interesting thing about making personal contact with your elected official is that you start to kind of build a network with that person. And oftentimes, since I'm like on the lower chain of politicians, I'll reach out and I'll respond to whoever made a comment. Just say, a lot of times say, hey, thanks for your comment, I appreciate it. Or sometimes I have questions for them. I'll get a chance to engage with them a little bit further, which is a really great opportunity for y'all as advocates, because that means that now you have someone who you can actually talk to, and next time you send a comment to them, they're probably going to be, pretty interested in hearing what you have to say. And this is how networks get built in the political world. And this is ultimately how people end up getting on commissions and committees to actually be a decision maker. So when you make a personalized, we make personalized contact with an elected official, don't be afraid to follow up with them on it too. If you don't hear back from them, send it to them again and say, hey, I just want to make sure that you got my comment, and wonder if you have any questions or if I can provide any further testimony to you. And oftentimes when you start doing this, you become kind of a regular individual. And when I'm making a hard decision on a hot topic, I reach out to these people before they even send comments to me, because I know that they're paying attention. Most of them are pretty well educated in the issue, and they're not some crazy person. And the more kind of background information I can gather and get the general consensus, I feel like I'm doing a better job for my constituency. So yeah, don't be afraid to follow up with them. If you called a senator and you don't hear back from them, call them again. They're busy. Their staff is super busy. And if you request a call back, you should get a call back, and don't be afraid to call them again. And then the last, I guess, real piece of advice I have for you is be nice. Remember that a lot of our elected officials are actually not paid employees. When you think about like congressmen, senators, county commissioners, governors, certain mayors, certain city councils, some of those folks are paid, but the vast majority of elected officials in this country are volunteers, and they're literally doing public service. So don't be afraid to thank them for their service. It goes a long way. And yeah, that's all I have for you.
As well, we've heard from some amazing folks that are so much deep in changing policy and advocacy, ways that we do things. Meghan knocked it out of the park. I just think a lot of the things that she said, Mia as well, are so key. I'm just going to take a little bit of a different turn and talk about just if your watershed is shut down, what can you do? Like, how do we stay connected? That happened to us, it happened here in the PNW anyway, around COVID. And now we have low return, so it's happening again. So I just wanted to sort of reorient us to what can we do to make a difference, and still stay connected to our watershed, even if we're not fishing. So just real quick, we have some ideas here around river snorkeling and scuba. My friend Shandy Danford did a wonderful post on Instagram, and she talked about how, hey, I can't fish my river right now, my home river, but everyone has like spare goggles laying around. Get a little wetsuit on, go actually look and see what's happening in your river during that time. You'll get more acquainted with what's going on, and it will make you actually a better fisherman. And then the advocacy and public reflection. The advocacy, I feel like a lot of us have covered this evening, which is beautiful. The reflection part, though, I feel like if you all are inclined to maybe take pictures and or post on social media or blogs or whatever about what's happening in your local stream, that actually is very effective and really helpful around folks who are trying to connect to their home waters, and things that may be going on or not. The draw map, thank you, Jillian. Draw map, write about your favorite watershed. I do have an example of a beautiful post by our friend Bridget Moran, who's actually on this call right now. I won't take time to read it, but if you can follow my friend Bridget Moran on Instagram, Twitter, maybe Facebook, she's a great author and also a great advocate of wild fish. So one should follow her and get her input around what we can do around these trying times. And then the one thing I do want to just highlight is that, and the last three speakers actually brought it up, but I'm going to underline it. Call your officials, write your officials, thank them for doing a job that, you guys, their job is thankless. A lot of them are volunteer, or if they're paid, it's a pittance. Please call them. Please, we call it catch them doing something well. If they're doing something good, please call them and say thank you for making this small decision around shutting the stream down, letting fish repopulate a little bit. Like that's going to go a long ways toward developing relationships that we all need in the future to help save our wild fish. So that's going to be my highlight there. And the last thing is that, and I know it says nerd out on history, but I really want to encourage everyone to make some inroads into reconnecting or continuing to connect with our local tribal folks. We are co-managers, at least in Washington and Oregon. That's all I'm going to talk about. In Washington and Oregon, we are co-managers of our fishery. We need to have better relations with our tribal folks. So I'm just that's my challenge to you. Please reach out and make some inroads. And if you are nervous about that or don't know how to do that or are curious about it, please call or email me and we'll have a chat. Oh, and then, the last thing I wanted to highlight, again, talking about the Western, the coastal United States here in the West, there are some things that we can do around climate change that can be a little helpful around helping our salmon adapt. A lot of our friend Jess Helsley runs the program for Washington State around the Wild Salmon Center. They have wonderful ideas, great outreach, great things that you can learn from and learn how to be a better steward of our fish and our land. So I encourage you to at least visit that website and get some, to do tomorrow, 8 things you can do right now to help our salmon.
So I want to do a huge shout out and thank you to all of our speakers. You guys were amazing and really appreciative, amazingly informative as well. And
hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Erica. I live here in Bend, Oregon. My husband is a guide. I, of course, fly fish because how else would I spend time with him? But I do have a question. I know that steelhead season, I wish Mia was here, but basically non-existent this year. Numbers are horrible, and it's just been a long time coming, and I fear for the future. But since I have all the pros here, what are some great organizations or folks I should reach out to? I know I can look at Google, but what would you recommend? Who would you recommend that I contact? Anybody off the top of their head?
Yeah, contact for what? What is the goal there?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I guess just maybe just awareness of, you shouldn't be fishing right now for steelhead. And I think a lot of people know that. I think a lot of guide services, public social media is doing a great job of that. But how do we create a future for steelhead? I mean, I know these are like $1 million questions here, but
perfect. I'm gonna weigh in right away and tell you that, we've got some great work in Oregon around like our Trout Unlimited groups.
Yeah.
Do a really good job and they really have their fingers on the pulse and they're wonderful. NEPA Fish Society has a very specific movement around, especially not taking wild steelhead in Southern Oregon. So there's a lot of things you can do there. I think that no one's doing a bad job around conservation. Because we're conservationists and we really feel so righteous, we get really involved in our own shit and we're like, yeah, they suck. No, we're all doing great work. So please Google, please support. We're all going for the same goal.
Mhm.
Unless that, I would just advocate for us not getting caught up in the, oh, but you have 10% thing, I don't agree, so I can't give you my money. No, we're all headed in the same direction. Can we just get along a little bit? But anyway, sorry, Erica. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, no, thank you. And definitely, I know, there's always drama and there's always, I mean, everybody has their big goal, but I think it's just, hey, as long as it's protecting our waters and our fish. And I know it's just, I mean, personal, no, like my husband and I did a little road trip out to Heart Mountain and we're driving along. I think it was the South Fork of the John Day. And we literally started, like, it brought tears to our eyes because there's no water. And then nothing against the farmers because farmers need water, but there's these lush green fields. And it's like, wait a second, what is happening? What is it going to look like 2 years from now, 10 years from now? Is this even going to be a thing? Not just for my husband's employment, but more importantly, just for the survival of these species. So I just thank everybody here tonight. I learned a lot. I don't, have as much time to go to rallies and meetings, but holy cow, I'm going to be making some calls and sending some emails. So thank you, everybody.
That is a beautiful thing, Erica. Hey, and by the way, Erica, guess who doesn't care about drama? Oh, wait, it's fish.
Yes, that's true. Thank goodness.
So Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission is actually looking at the Southwest Management Plan on October 15th. And they're, one of the proposals in front of them is to go to catch and release only for wild steelhead. So it's a great time to practice your commenting skills with those folks.
Okay.
You can go to the meeting or you can write them an email.
Okay, October 15th, you said. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I will participate in any way I can.